The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Here we go, loaded show. Welcome to the program. We might have a special guest, so if you see me glance down at my phone, that's because I'm lining up that special guest. So, Caleb, let me turn it to you. What all do we have planned on the program today? A little Nico talk will lead us off, and we'll end it with some Diamond Vols versus softball Vols. What do we got going on today?
Yeah, so we got a lot of great stuff to talk about today, guys. We're going to start with which Tennessee football player will benefit the most from Nico Iamaleava being on the team, assuming Nico lives up to all the hype. Bru McCoy, we continue with our countdown of the most important Vols for the season. We're going to talk Bru McCoy today. We also have a conversation and maybe a debate between Dave and I over what's the toughest September game for Tennessee. Conventional wisdom says one team, but I actually think it might be another. We're going to get into that. Also, there are 6 newcomers in the SEC and Big Ten this year. There were going to be 4 Big Ten newcomers and 2 SEC newcomers. Which of them is most likely to get exposed as a fraud that took advantage of the easier conference they played in? We'll get to that. And also, yes, Tennessee baseball versus Tennessee softball. Softball is about to begin the NCAA tournament. Tennessee baseball is about to wrap up the regular season. If you had to bet who would be more likely to win the national championship this year, we're going to dive into that as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of good things to talk about.
Let's go. Today's tough question is right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Which offensive player will benefit the most from an outstanding season, if he has it, by Nico Iamaleava? Which player will benefit the most? I drew the long straw, so I got to go first at the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, and I went with Bru McCoy. A very close second would be a guy in Dante Thorton that I think is going to be the comeback player of the year. What say you, Caleb? You have the tougher challenge because I think Bru McCoy is the obvious answer.
Well, Bru McCoy is good in his own right.
Very true.
And he looked great with Hendon Hooker, and he would have looked great with Joe Milton. So which player is going to be benefit the most? I'm going to go the whole tight end room. And this is and I say that because we're not exactly sure who Tennessee will use as their primary receiving tight end just yet. But I think the whole tight end room is where I'm going to go because I think the entire tight end room, they utilized them a couple of years ago when Princeton Fant and Jacob Warren complemented each other. And I think they have enough bodies now to figure out a rotation like that this year. I mean, they had it last year too, I guess, with McCollum Castles and Warren. But I think the reason it's a big deal is because Milton had the worst touch on it. Joe Milton had the worst touch on any throw you could ever make over the middle. And Hendon Hooker, for all of his greatness, guys, he actually struggled with these short routes over the middle. So the tight ends couldn't thrive as much in Josh Heupel's system as you might expect. Nico showed a lot in terms of his ability to get the ball to the tight ends in the Citrus Bowl. He's very accurate over the middle. He's got nice touch. I think McCollum Castles was his best receiver against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl. Now, part of that is the 4-2-5 bear defense that Iowa played, left a lot of room open for the tight ends, but Joe Milton wouldn't have been able to make those throws, and Hendon Hooker may not have been able to make those throws. So I think when teams are starting to sell out to take away the deep ball, you're going to see so many passing lanes open for the tight ends, and they got some athletes out there now that could probably make a lot of plays.
All right, portions of the program, including today's tough question, brought to you by Don Self, our State Farm agent in Chattanooga. Go to donself.net, donself.net. I know that everybody wants the best prices, but when you make that claim, you want to make sure it's paid off in a speedy manner. So that's Don Self, donself.net, right down below, donself.net. Bruce, kind of an easy cop-out answer. The guy that Dante Thornton, the guy, though, that I want to discuss for a moment is Dante Thornton. We're going to get to Brew McCoy in our countdown of most important players coming out of spring. Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Take that second. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, we're about at 5K, and we're excited. Dante Thornton, though, I said it earlier this segment, he's going to be the most improved player of the year. I firmly believe that. And I don't really even know who's a close competitive candidate for that, except for Keenan Pili. Anybody else out there?
Yeah, and Keenan Pili was hurt. I mean, if Andre Carrick lives up to his hype, he might be the most improved player at left guard this year. We could talk about that, but I mean, Tennessee as we talk about it, they got hit badly with the injury bug last year. Now that you wonder, is that Josh Heupel and lack of conditioning, or was it just kind of a bad break? Looking back, because Bru McCoy went down, Cooper Mays went down, Javonte Spraggins went down, Dante Thornton went down, and I'm barely out of the offensive side of the ball right there. Joe Milton played hurt for parts of the season. So Dante Thornton is a good one. I was highly critical of Dante Thornton at the beginning of last year, but there were reports of him being injured. He was still trying to figure out the offense. The reason I have a hard time with Dante Thornton is I think he's going to be in the rotation. But Dave, I'm making a bold prediction that I think Mike Matthews is going to be the other white out this year opposite Thornton. I think Mike Matthews is a guy that, it's what I was saying about Thornton 2 years ago when he transferred from Oregon, but I think Mike Matthews is a guy that they can't resist getting out on the field even as a true freshman. I think they're going to want to get him the ball as much as possible, which will take reps away from Thornton. He's on that billboard.
Which Vols benefit the most from Nico? Right now, it's 50% Brew, 17% everybody split Dante, slot receivers and the tight ends. We didn't talk much about the slot receivers, but could that become the go-to position? In other words, I think Brew McCoy, being a one receiver that dictates coverage, can open up a lot in the slot. So McCoy, didn't mean for that to rhyme, McCoy may not be the leading receiver, but he could be the most impactful receiver if Squirrel White has Jalen Hyatt top of season.
Yeah, the reason I didn't name Squirrel White is I think Squirrel White, again, is a guy who's not going to be made to look better. He's just going to be made to look as good as he actually is. Sure. And that is, I know that sounds like such a shot at Joe Milton. I know it's hard to not take these shots, but guys, Joe Milton had trouble over the middle, which also hurts slot receivers.
I'm not saying anything. I have taken my medicine. I have moved on until I write the Joe Milton book 25 years later.
There are many other issues that Joe Milton was facing last year that were not his fault. I talked about the injury bug. That's not his fault. He got dealt with a rash of injuries, he was not playing with the same hand Hendon Hooker got to play with in 2022, or the same hand Nico Iamaleava was going to be able to play with in 2024. But he's also not as good as those two quarterbacks. Okay. So the problem he threw way too heavy of a ball over the middle. And Squirrel White, as a slot guy, who's a little guy, by the way, you're asking this little guy to be able to make back shoulder catches, running quick slant routes that are thrown a little off at 100 miles an hour. By the way, Squirrel White's running really, really, really fast too, because he is very fast. So that was very difficult to do. I think this year Squirrel White will just reach what we expect him to reach and what he's good enough to reach. I think Dante Thornton is a guy that will actually be made to look better than he is because of Nico Iamaleava. And I say the same with the tight end room. I think of one of the ways I bring it back, Dave, is NFL. Reggie Wayne, good receiver in his own right? He would have been good anywhere. But
absolutely. But are you going down the lines of Peyton Manning made him that much better?
Peyton Manning made him that much better, but then there were other players on that team that would have just been role players or solid players their whole career who Peyton Manning turned into all-stars. Marvin Harrison's that. I think Peyton Manning made Marvin Harrison and Dallas Clark. But I actually think Reggie Wayne was good in his own right.
Yeah, I think Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same page. I thought that Reggie Wayne was a really good receiver. Speaking of receivers, we count down the most impactful balls as you head into summer workouts. But first, one more note I want to make on this topic. That is, if Nico comes in and he's got a fantastic, accurate arm and he's making plays at a high level, it helps the running backs out as well. It helps them out immensely to open things up because they were facing a much different tackle box last year than they were in 2022. Much different, much more loaded, much more stacked. And I don't believe they're going to see that this year.
Yeah, but they still ran the ball well last year. I think, though, I agree. It's going to help the running backs a lot. The only thing I will say is that I think a lot of times the running backs are used to open up the passing game in Heupel's system. It just doesn't look like that, because of how much tempo he runs and how often he airs it out. But I agree, it could help the running backs, and it's going to be needed to help the running backs. But it could also, it could expose certain running backs too. Dylan Sampson. Because if you're really, really good and you open it up, your running backs, if they can't pass pro, that's going to show.
What are the chances that we've seen about half of this offense? We haven't seen a whole lot of screens. We haven't seen a whole lot of draws. We haven't seen many trick plays, really. I wonder, there's a part of me, and I've seen an offense that I think is fantastic, so I'm not knocking it, but I wonder if there's about 40 to 50% of the playbook left, because you think about it, yes, you had Hendon Hooker for a second year coming in as a starter, and now you have Nico, but that's still a limited time working together. I don't know if it's Nico's 2025 year or 2024, but I think as Josh Heupel gets more comfortable with Nico, he'll run more things. And I just wonder how much is in that playbook of his or how much can be developed over time that we haven't seen yet. That's why I think Nico is so exciting. As excited as you've been for Tennessee football and this offense, it can be that much better than it was in 2022. I believe Nico brings that to the table.
I'm going to break from you. I think we've seen 100% of this offense. We just haven't seen all 100% together at one time. Because a lot of what you're talking about that we didn't see, remember, they ran a lot of that with Hendon Hooker in 2021 when Javonte Payton was the other receiver opposite Cedric Tillman. They were able to run a lot more screens and draws and things like that. So I think with Nico, I guess the best comparison at a totally different time, but, with Peyton Manning, they ran a pro-style offense. With T. Barton, they wanted to be a more conservative, run-oriented offense. But then there was Heath Schuler. And they just totally ran both to the fullest extent, didn't they? I mean, that 93 offense was the most multi-set offense in college football ever at that time, wasn't it? With Heath Schuler?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's what they're going to start to do with Nico here, is they're going to take elements that they've run in 2021 and 2022, because we saw a lot of long screens last year, in case you forgot, because somebody couldn't throw much more than that. But I think we are going to see this. We're going to see the offense run probably to as closer to its full extent this year than we've seen ever before, particularly even in 2022. And everybody's forgetting this. Cedric Tillman getting hurt in 2022 did a number on Tennessee on that offense. It really did. And that actually limited Josh Heupel's playbook. Now, it didn't matter. They were still great. They had Jalen Hyatt, and he stepped up in the slot. But the truth of the matter is, we actually didn't see what that offense could have been if Cedric Tillman and Bru McCoy were playing opposite of each other, fully healthy.
Very true. All right. We have taken a look at which players, as we count down the top 10 most important players heading into the summer. We're at number 7. We will announce that, but give us the countdown to build up the suspense, Caleb Calhoun.
All right, so we have discussed Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell Jr., and Amari Thomas. Who I probably should have put higher, but I love him because I'm a huge Amari Thomas fan. But
it's true. All right, well, we did this together. I'm a big McCoy guy, and we've got him at number 7. So somehow I probably would have had him a little bit higher. There's a group effort there. Why is he the 7th most important player and one of the most important players on Tennessee's football team? Because I think you saw last season without Bru McCoy, and we want to throw this all on the quarterback, but I'm not going to do that. I think we saw last season that they didn't have a guy that dictated coverage, and Tennessee was suddenly defendable. I think a big part of that was because of Bru McCoy, and I'm curious if you think it was more Bru, more quarterback, what percentage? Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off, HOOKED for 10% off. And I remind you that our poll question is up and running right now. Which Vol benefits the most from Nico? Now, Bru, 32%. Dante Thornton, 32%. Slot receiver, 11%. Tight ends get 26%. So Tennessee's offense last year and their struggles, what percentage was quarterback play? What percentage was Bru McCoy being injured and not having a true number one wide receiver?
Let the record show that Dave is out here right now providing a very legitimate excuse for Joe Milton's struggles last year. He's not putting it all on Joe Milton. Look at Dave. Everybody stand up and applaud for Dave.
It's a real one. Yeah, I mean, it's a real one because other guys aren't as open because you don't have to shift coverage over to him. And I thought Tillman was that kind of guy and McCoy was that kind of guy. So, yeah, I'll defend quarterback play last year. Got no problem doing that.
Yeah, I think that was a huge issue, largely because Dante Thornton was was out of position and he was never fully healthy. So with that, they didn't have, you're right, they didn't have any receiver that could actually change coverage or dictate coverage. Now, Ramel Keaton was a reliable hands guy, but you're right, he wasn't going to dictate coverage. And also Ramel Keaton was playing hurt last year too. I forgot about him.
And about three people who pointed out drop balls, which was a bit of a factor.
Yes, but okay, guys, part of the drop balls is it's hard to get in rhythm with quarterbacks if they're not hitting you accurately a lot. And then when they
leading you, throwing you open. I agree with that, but goodness gracious, we've gone back and forth with current players who some of which believe that, yeah, if it hits you in the hand, you got to catch it. Some think that, no, you need to throw a better ball. So, but you're right. Some of those probably should have been caught.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. And Bru McCoy's injury definitely didn't help. I do think it was part of it. Look, but then I go back and look, Dave. I mean, Tennessee's last two losses, they're not beating Missouri or Georgia, no matter who's healthy or when they're healthy. Those were two blowout losses because the defenses were just horrendous. And then the offense couldn't close the deal when they moved the ball. Do they beat Alabama? I still don't think they do. I think Alabama turned it on when they needed to. I think the only injury that really made an impact on any game was Florida last year. And Bru McCoy was in that game. But in terms of how Joe Milton looked in games, yeah, I'd be willing to say that if Bru McCoy is out there, he probably gets a couple more touchdowns where they blow out Kentucky. He makes Missouri more respectable. I think a lot of that happens. So Bru getting back this year is a big deal. Also, look, they've gone from 1 to 4 receivers that can dictate coverage because Mike Matthews can dictate coverage.
Well, we think.
Yes. Everything I've heard is that Chris Brazzell can. He apparently was a standout in the spring. And now Chris Brazzell is just a hands guy. That doesn't necessarily mean dictate coverage. So I could be overreacting there. But Dante Thornton's athleticism should make him good enough to dictate coverage. So I think because of that, I think if it were this year, Tennessee would be much better no matter what, because if there was an injury, they'd be able to offset it. You're right. It was an issue last year, and Bru McCoy was missed down the stretch of the season. I'm just not sure they win any of those games if Bru McCoy is healthy, because I don't think Tennessee, again, Alabama, I think was just better. Missouri threw a totally different game plan, and Georgia was just significantly better.
The only one that I could probably, I could pick two of those games. Missouri with a Bru McCoy, they're a much, much better offense. And I could say that with Alabama, you and I differ on Alabama. I think that Nick Saban just kind of discovered what they needed to do. I don't think that Tennessee was being played with at all. I think they would have won had there been a quarterback change. Again, I don't want to get into that, but Bru McCoy, what happens if he is not your guy for whatever reason, if the injury continues to hurt him or if he gets re-injured, God forbid, that's something you certainly don't want. But let me ask you, in terms of what if he's not your major contributor this upcoming year, who is? And it's brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Stop in and say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. Hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. So if it's not Bru, who is it?
To dictate coverage this year?
Yes. I mean, 'cause I think it takes one guy who can move defensive backs around. I disagree with you on Thornton. I don't think he's that good. But I think if they have to turn to another receiver, I don't think he's on the team right now. I think they would.
I disagree.
Okay, well, that's fine. I think they would have to do somewhat of the group effort like they did when Bru went down last year, and we saw how that went.
I think you may be right about Thornton, and I said Chris Brazo with hands. Those aren't hills I would die on, so I'll just be fair on that.
Love that.
But what I will say, I think Mike Matthews could do it. I think Mike Matthews is a generational talent at wide receiver. You may be looking, if everything the coaches have hinted about him is true, dare we say the Randy Moss profile?
Okay, you did that last year, and look what you did to him.
I didn't do that to Dante Thornton last year. I said he's a rare fit. I'm doing this with Mike Matthews. I've heard everything, nothing but good things about Mike Matthews. If he doesn't show up this year, I'm going to start calling the Heupel coaching staff as much liars as Butch Jones's coaching staff was.
Okay, but listen, you're talking about Randy. You've compared two Tennessee wide receivers to Randy Moss.
I never compared Thornton to Moss. No, what I said was Thornton going to Tennessee's offense was like Kevin Durant joining the Warriors because the offense was already elite, and then you add this receiver who's just a perfect fit for it. Okay, Mike Matthews, I'm not saying like Mike Matthews is a guy. It's not a fit thing. Mike Matthews would be elite anywhere, but everything I've heard is that did you see that catch he made in the spring game? It actually wasn't an accurate throw by Nico. So I'm just saying, guys, watch out for Mike Matthews. I think that Mike Matthews is going to be a superstar. And just to address a question that was just mentioned on the message board, I think Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod are going to not play much this year. I think they have pretty much been relegated to.
I think they've been surpassed by more talented players.
Yes, all due respect to them. But yeah. I think
only love here. Caleb, the show represented.
Yes, I never hate anybody here.
The show represented by Banks and Jones, and who will be Tennessee's most productive receiver out of the guys we've mentioned in 60 seconds. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Rank it in terms of catches and yardage. Tennessee's top three receivers other than Bru are who, Caleb? Do we want to say as Off the Hook Sports, our take is Brazo, Matthews, and Thornton? They may not be the next best three, but we can do that for the sake of argument. I would take out of the three of those most catches, Brazo, second, Thornton, and third, Matthews. I'm going to go third, Matthews in yards as well, but I'll flip-flop those guys and go Thornton because I think he's a bigger deep threat and will gain more yardage. Fair? Does that make sense?
Fair enough. I'm going to go Brew McCoy leads and catches and yards, obviously. Second is going to be Squirrel White. Squirrel White in the slot, because the slot guy is always the second. The slot guy and the whiteout are the top two guys in the system. After Squirrel White, I will go. I'm gonna go Mike Matthews. And then I'll go Dante Thornton. Now, I could be swayed on that. I think Mike Matthews is a more generational overall receiver. But from what you're telling me, it sounds like Dante Thornton could be the Alvin Harper of this offense. Yes. Where just straight line, run down the sideline, and then clear things up for Brew McCoy on the other side.
Right. I think the defense rotates over to cover Brew, give a little help on him. I mean, UTC may not do it. They may not do it early in September. They'll make sure that he's 100% healthy, but it's going to happen eventually. Boy, Dylan made up a great point. Castles could have had a great season with Nico. That just does seem like a great match if they could have had 1 year together.
Mahomes and Kelsey style?
Yeah, I can only imagine. All right, so there we go. So you like Brazel. We both like Matthews. Matthews, by the way, it's worth noting, on a billboard in Knoxville. And listen, they don't think for a second that the Spire Group doesn't have some insight from the University of Tennessee and their football staff as to who goes on billboards. And Mike Matthews is on a car dealership billboard. Tennessee's upcoming opponents, NC State or Oklahoma. Vols' toughest September game. I'm going to switch up the order here just a little bit, Caleb, because I love your take on this. And we can go ahead and set it up as a poll question. What is Tennessee's toughest game in September? Is it NC State or Oklahoma? And my guy Caleb actually thinks it might be NC State.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
A trip to Oklahoma is Tennessee's toughest test in September. I don't think there's any question about that. Yet Caleb is a little wary of a neutral site game against NC State. Why is that, Caleb Calhoun?
Well, as I put up the poll question real quick, I would say that I think NC State might be better than Oklahoma. And I'm going to break down a few reasons why.
Lay it on me.
One, I've been saying for a while, I think the bottom is going to fall out on Oklahoma at some point with Brent Venables as head coach. I do. I've thought that for a while. They scored a very, do I want to say lucky last year win over Texas? And that's kind of sold them, but they lost 2 to Kansas and Oklahoma State. It was a weak Big 12. I think Brent Venables has some real issues, and I think that's going to start to get exposed even more with Jeff Lebby gone. I also think that them going to the SEC will expose them more. And I think Josh Heupel is going to be so motivated and focused and on dominating Oklahoma with Nico. He's going to, for 2 reasons. One, he wants to get revenge on Oklahoma, but 2, he wants that to be Nico's coming out party because all of the college football world is going to descend on Tennessee, Oklahoma that weekend. NC State is sneakier. Tennessee's going into the NC State game saying, can we just get past this game? And they're not a bad program, guys. In case you forget, I want to point this out. Dave Doran was one of the names on the list of the crazy, chaotic coaching search Tennessee underwent back in 2017 after nixing the Greg Schiano hire. So Dave Doran is not some total scrub. He's been there for 11 seasons. He's entering his 12th season. NC State was 9-4 last year and ranked number 21. That was after they lost their quarterback. They're proving that they're actually maintaining a program at this point. And 2 of their losses, one of their losses was by 3 points to Louisville. So they could be a very dangerous team. And also, and this is the final part about this. This reminds me of when Tennessee played Pitt in 2022. They were significantly better, but even though they returned a lot of talent, they were still kind of getting adjusted to things at the Pitt game, and they made a lot of mistakes, and they needed overtime to win. There's going to be even more adjustments this year with a new quarterback, receivers getting healthy, linemen getting healthy, people like that. And that's the second game of the year. There's going to be a lot of rest in that game. And NC State's a dangerous team to have a lot of rest against. So I think when you add all those things in, I think NC State's very clearly the tougher game. Now, I'm going to say this. I will put this out right now. If Tennessee beats NC State, they're going to beat the brakes off Oklahoma. They're going to absolutely humiliate them. If they don't get past NC State, they're going to lose to Oklahoma. It's going to derail the team.
Let me ask you this. Which loss would be more damaging to Tennessee's football season? Jimmy Heim's nice enough to join us each and every Wednesday. He is on vacation, but his appearances are brought to you by Varner Ford. So, Caleb, are you ready to address that question in 15 seconds?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 crew cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Okay, a loss to Oklahoma would be an SEC loss. That still sounds weird. A loss to NC State would just be an ACC loss. So on surface level, you would say Oklahoma is the worst game to lose, right? But NC State would be a real kick in the gut.
It would, but y'all are going to find this crazy. Even though I think they will lose to Oklahoma if they lose to NC State, I think it's easier to recover from the NC State game. Not just because it's not a conference game. I also think that I've seen a lot of teams lose early non-conference games to bad teams with new quarterbacks and really kind of turn things around. Urban Meyer, the year he won the national title at Ohio State, do you remember how he lost? He lost to Virginia Tech the second week of the season. JT Barrett's second game starting. So I think Urban Meyer. I think if Ohio State could survive that, I think Tennessee could actually survive the NC State game.
Yeah, that sounds like a devastating loss, though. That to me is like a whole nother level of loss. That's like a going back in time loss. That to me feels like almost a Wyoming loss. I know it's not. That NC State's much better, but that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, but okay. It's not like Tennessee hasn't recovered from games like that before. Dave, you covered the Cal game in Berkeley. They lost that, and then they went to go win the East that year.
That's true. That was a Cal team that I thought was very motivated to beat Tennessee.
Because of what happened the year before.
Because of what happened the year before. You're absolutely right. But for the most part, I think you start losing the NC States of the world. That feels butchish to me. There hasn't been a loss where Tennessee just showed up and it felt like Butch Jones was the head coach again, has there? Or that Derek Dooley was sending 38 defensive tackles onto the field.
Oh, no, there has. Absolutely, there has. Last year, Missouri and Florida were that, and South Carolina was that the year before.
But I give South Carolina a pass because of the James Banks situation. I'm sorry, the
Jeremy Banks
situation. And then I give Tennessee a bit of a pass because I thought Missouri just outcoached them. Maybe that's a loss. Maybe pass is the wrong word, Caleb. And then I understand what happened at Florida last year, which was the Cooper Mays incident. So there haven't. If you want to throw that one at me, the Missouri game last year, I'd give you that one. But I think that's the only Butch game that's been on Heupel's resume.
I'm not going to give the Florida one a pass. I don't care that Cooper Mays was out. That was a bad Florida team. That felt very Butchish because that was a team that Tennessee was significantly better than. That they made mistake after mistake in the first half. I'm not going to give you the Florida one. They shouldn't have lost that game. That was inexcusable. And I think that, look, I'm putting a lot of this on Josh Heupel, and this is maybe the only thing that might make me amend my Oklahoma talk is that still have very big concerns about Heupel on the road.
Dylan, I agree with Dylan. Dylan says if we drop a game to NC State, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations about Josh Heupel. I don't think that that's an exaggeration at all.
Oh, no, I agree we will, but I think it'll actually be easier to rebound from. I think it's going to be harder to rebound from the Oklahoma game, quite honestly. And so like that's where I met with this. I think,
but with an Oklahoma loss, you could essentially be out of an SEC championship and a national championship because you're probably not going to run the table the rest of the way, and a loss to Georgia is probably on the horizon.
Well, that would be the same with the loss to NC State. And you're not. Who cares about the SEC championship?
Well, I still do. I still do, but I'm not going to give you that.
You're just trying to go to the playoff now, okay? I don't. If I'm Tennessee, I don't even want to go to Atlanta. And I said, you know what? I talked about this the other day. There's a possibility of a 3-way tie with 3 undefeated teams. If Tennessee's one of those 3 undefeated teams in the SEC, and that happens this year, they should request to not go to Atlanta. They should say, we don't want to go. We'd just rather go to the playoff. Don't waste travel and an extra game we have to play. I don't want that. I want to get ready for the playoff. Call it a day. This whole thing is I'm going on my saga. This whole thing is a charade, and it's stupid, and they've devalued the conference championship games because the conference commissioners were not forward-thinking enough to not realize how they were going to screw everything up with this 12-team playoff.
There's a lot of truth to that. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. Which of the teams that have made the move to another conference have maybe made a mistake and will have the toughest time making a transition? That'll come up later in the program. But when you look at the Oklahoma game, you talk about toughest to bounce back from. How tough is it going to be for Josh Heupel to bounce back from that loss? Because with his time there, this is a big, big deal for him. Now, let me give you my thoughts on return rivalry games, reunion games, whatever you want to call them. I think the team that has the most people that will benefit on one side usually wins. So if a coach goes to play a former team by, let's say, a year removed, let's say Lane Kiffin played Tennessee the very next year, I think that Tennessee players would have been motivated to take out on Lane Kiffin. This, however, I think actually Tennessee has an advantage over Oklahoma because they know what Josh Heupel has gone through in Norman, and they want him to look fantastic. They want to back their guy. They know how important it is to him. So if they drop that, I think it would be a really tough one because I think there's more importance on this game than there is your average SEC game. Right or wrong?
Yeah, it depends on – I'm with you on that. It depends on how you left, to be fair. Just to give you an example, when Bruce Pearl was fired by Tennessee, he came back to Auburn and he beat Tennessee his second year, and he was like, I was taking this game personally. Really, Bruce? It was your fault you got fired by Tennessee. That wasn't Tennessee's fault. But Josh Heupel does get to take it personal because Josh Heupel was scapegoated by Oklahoma because they wanted to force the RPO air raid offense on him because Bob Stoops got wrecked by Johnny Manziel doing that, and he thought that Trevor Knight could be Johnny Manziel for Oklahoma. Josh Heupel was proven right. It didn't work. Rather than Bob Stoops admit he was wrong, he just fired Josh Heupel and scapegoated him for the fact that his brother was a very incompetent defensive coordinator that year at Oklahoma. So all of that, Josh Heupel has every reason in the world to bitterly resent Oklahoma. And guys, this is why you never have to worry about him going back to Oklahoma. Because as long as they maintain ties with Bob Stoops, Heupel wants nothing to do with that place. In his mind, he won Bob Stoops' only national championship, and he is the reason for Bob Stoops' success, not the other way around.
Let me ask you this. I agree with you, but what if he goes out there and puts up a show in Norman? Do they think, let's separate ourselves a little bit from that Stoops guy? Let's separate ourselves from the guys that separated themselves from Josh Heupel. If they have too big of a day, could it make Oklahoma fans say, go get that Josh Heupel from Tennessee? He was our quarterback. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. We want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals? They're awesome at Tennessee Tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Could Josh Heupel put on too much of a show in Norman to the point in which Oklahoma fans would say, go get him. I don't care what happened. These other guys don't know what they're doing. Stoops and the crew. I want to go get Josh Heupel. Could he have that big of a day? I think he could. That a lot of the fans would be like, how did you let him get away? Which I'm not trying to poke you into saying Josh Heupel might leave. I don't think he will. I just think it's kind of funny that Tennessee fans now get the poking stick. And the poking stick is to poke Oklahoma and say, got your quarterback. like Alabama poked LSU, which is their big-time rival, about Nick Saban. I think that's kind of cool for Tennessee fans.
Okay, so let's laugh about this.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Josh Heupel, not only could he do that, Dave, he wants to do that. That's his goal against Oklahoma this year is to do that. And so now, to be fair, again, you're right. To do that, he's got to get past the NC State game, which still, I guess, in that way makes NC State more important because he's got to get his team the confidence they need. But if
let's assume he wins that game and the offense is clicking pretty good.
I think Josh Heupel is going to because it's a few things. Again, guys, look at the slate of games that day. Tennessee, Oklahoma. If both teams are undefeated, that's going to be the biggest game of the day. All of the college football world will be descending on Tennessee, Oklahoma that day. It's the SEC opener for both teams. It's Josh Heupel going back to nowhere. There's so many storylines there. I'm telling you, Josh Heupel is going to go out of his way to put on a show to do exactly what you said. Now, Josh Heupel, I don't know what's in his heart with his alma mater and everything like that. I do know this. I do know that he would be, if he does that and he's able to get Tennessee rolling to the point to where he is offered by Oklahoma, he would be in a better position to stay at Tennessee than go to Oklahoma because of the NIL collective at Tennessee is much better. And the recruiting, I think, is better, even though Oklahoma recruits pretty well with Texas. But it could be a Johnny Majors situation. I mean, Tennessee was in bad shape when Johnny Majors took over in 77, but he still wanted to come home to Tennessee because that's where he played. And so it could be that for Josh Heupel. But you're right. Josh Heupel, at the very least, he wants to humiliate Oklahoma to the point to where they would consider cutting ties with Stoops just to go get him.
He would love that. He would love that. Jimmy Himes usually joins us, brought to you by our good friends at Varner Ford. He is on vacation. We'll have him back for a couple of times when Caleb's got to have a baby or something like that. Stay tuned. He's Caleb. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Want to remind you that you can participate in several contests if you just become a member of Hooker's Corner. I'm going to put the link right here. And you do not have to be a paid member necessarily to be eligible for said contest. As a matter of fact, I'll have some more information on that. Now, you do have to be a paid member in order to be eligible for our fantastic prizes from Sports Treasures. We're going back and forth. Would the people rather have, Caleb, a baseball piece of memorabilia, and we can hear from that on the message board, or would they rather have, I don't know, let's say a Zakai Ziegler piece of autographed memorabilia? Well, we can take care of you right there, along with extended recruiting coverage, expanded recruiting coverage, and interaction with me and Caleb anytime. I remember that you need to check out Sports Treasures. They're in North Knoxville, or just get on Facebook. You can get on Facebook. Caleb, pull yourself back up. I'm having trouble there. But our friends at Sports Treasures have over 5 million Sports Treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. Sports Treasures is absolutely awesome. How about that? Travis says either are solid. The Zakai Ziegler autographed memorabilia or the Diamond Ball. So I'll meet with Zach at Sports Treasures. We'll figure all that good stuff out today. So
hey, we owe an apology.
Yes.
Kent State and UT Chattanooga are also on Tennessee's September schedule, and they could be as tough as NC State and Oklahoma, right?
Yes, we left them out. We are totally incredibly bad people for leaving them out. I think we can live with that. How about you?
UT Chattanooga back in the day had one of the best FCS athletic directors in all the sports, but they're not the same anymore.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas is right now.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, which team making the move to the Big Ten or SEC will have the most difficult challenge this upcoming season? 4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas, and do want to remind you that you can stop by and just say hello. Off the Hook Sports sent me. You got to celebrate 98 book for me or a t-shirt. That's what they will do for you. Coop, let's get to 4 Downs. What do people need to do to take advantage of the fantastic segment we know is 4 Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, here we go. First down, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
All right. We got 6 teams. Southern California, the University of California, Los Angeles, Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma, and Texas making a move to a big-time conference, one of the super conferences. I should just go ahead and work in there. Maybe that'll become a thing. First down is this. Who has the toughest transition?
The toughest transition to me is going to be Oklahoma because of their SEC schedule. They have a brutal the SEC welcomed Oklahoma and said, hey, here's the toughest schedule possible because we want to make sure Texas has the easiest schedule possible so we can, sell the idea of Texas in the SEC. Just on a side, putting SEC media days in Dallas, giving Texas the easiest schedule. Doesn't it feel like Greg Sankey is trying to rig the season to make sure Texas has a standout year as the big market team in the SEC now?
We're somewhat going to get to that. I'm going to say that. That's fine. That's fine. Any of the West Coast teams, basically. And I would have said either of the SEC teams, but they proved they were good last year, right? So I don't think they're going to step in. What's that?
Oklahoma didn't prove they were good.
Oh, no. They did the year before. My point is they proved they were competent. They were so bad 3 or 4 years ago that I didn't think they could step into the SEC and do much of anything. Point is, I just kind of changed my take on that. I'll take the West Coast teams having to go. I'll take any of the 4 having to go all the way out east to do everything in athletics. Second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
So who has the best layout for this upcoming season? You think it's Texas? I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's Texas. And I apologize, guys. I spoke out of turn a little earlier because I figured we were going to go to who's going to have the easiest. It's going to be Texas because the SEC is rigging it for Texas. The other part, though, I will say,
strong word.
No, they are straight up rigging it for Texas. Look at the schedule they gave Texas.
Okay, hold on. Let me get to third down because this is going to be Texas. All right, third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Does the SEC want Texas to be better more than any other team? In other words, would they rather Texas win a championship than Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee? Is that true? And yes, the message board asked, is Caleb expecting? Yes, he is, but he hasn't put on a pound. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yes, the SEC wants Texas to be good.
It's crazy.
Everything they're doing is to promote Texas. They put SEC Media Days in Dallas. They gave Texas the easiest SEC schedule possible when they gave the random schedule strengths this year. I have never seen a team enter a conference and get everything handed to them. I swear the SEC borderline may allow them to bring the Longhorn Network back the way they've gone all in with Texas. I mean, it is insane.
It'd be SEC Network 2.
They're kowtowing to Texas the way the Big 12 was kowtowing to Texas for years, okay?
Did you see the logo, by the way, for the new SEC ESPN?
I did not.
Okay,
is it good?
We'll pull that up then, and we'll get to fourth down. Here's the thing that Caleb's not telling you is that Texas being better is actually better for the SEC, but he just glosses right over that.
Of course it is, but that's why they wanted to be better.
Stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas, pick up that free Celebrate 98 book, or pick up the t-shirt and just say hello. And then don't forget to get registered on Hooker's Corner. It's on the message board. And if you're registered, you can win a fantastic prize that we will be able to announce tomorrow. 1 minute, then I'm going to tell you why Texas needs to be great for the SEC to reach its utmost potential. You know, the best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Is the SEC better if Texas is elite?
Yes, that's why they're rigging it for Texas. They want Texas to be good.
Thumbs up.
Now,
I ask you too easy of a question.
Now, I want to get back a little bit to this for a minute, because I did say, as far as the other team that'll have the easiest time transitioning, I think USC will actually work out in the Big Ten. That's where I kind of disagree with you. I think that Lincoln Riley offense will catch a lot of Big Ten teams by fire. Look, guys, the data is out there, and you can say what you want about Michigan most recently winning the national title, but the SEC and the Big Ten are two super conferences, but one conference is deeper than the other, significantly so, with NFL talent, with recent championships, and everything like that. The Big Ten is catching up, but there is still a gap. So I think USC will have a more fun time with there are a lot of slow defenses in the Big Ten that USC is going to light up. I also spoke out of turn because I just want to get back to real quick the team that'll have the toughest ride. I do think Washington is going to have a really tough go in the Big Ten, but it's also because they're changing coaches. And I think they got really lucky in Pac-12 play last year.
Would you rather make that trip, all things being equal? Let's say this was a super Pac-12 that absorbed USC and UCLA. What's more concerning about you? the level of football play in the SEC, if you're a team choosing a conference, or that goofy travel schedule that they're going to have to endure?
I think because of the 12-team playoff, the goofy travel schedule. I don't think the level of play holds you back as much anymore because of the 12-team playoff. You know, you could be 6th in the SEC and you might actually get into the playoff in the future. So I think it's going, and I think Texas is good enough to be 6th in the SEC, or 5th or 4th, and Oklahoma is good enough for a top 4 finish in the SEC. If you had a 12-team playoff, Texas A&M and Missouri would have had multiple playoff appearances since joining in 2011. So I do think the travel schedule for the West Coast teams is more of an issue. But the good thing for them, Dave, and this is a big part of it, is, oh no, I take that back. Eastern time zone goes all the way through Indiana. So half the Big Ten is on Eastern time. So I would have said that that's Central time, so it's not as bad, but nope. It goes all the way through, because I would have said that Eastern time zone teams are like Maryland and Rutgers, and they're the bad ones, but they're not the only ones on Eastern time zone. So
what are fair expectations for Texas in year 1, year 5, and year 10? I saw a pretty good football team last year. So I think the expectations are this. Out of 5 seasons, if you're the University of Texas, you should make the college football playoff 4 out of 5 years, and you should make a championship game run 1 out of 5 years. I never say you should win a championship, very rarely, Caleb, because I know that the ball can bounce the wrong way. And sometimes, even though it doesn't happen a lot in football, the lesser team can win. But I will say you should make a championship game appearance, and you should make the college football playoff 4 out of 5 years. Now, with Tennessee, because they don't have the in-state talent to give you a backdrop personally to judge this, I got Tennessee should make the college football playoff 3 out of 5 years and should make the Final Four at the very least once out of those 5 years. Comparing the two, am I fair? Does that make sense at least?
That's fair.
Or too fair.
In an NIL age, it's hard for me to say Tennessee shouldn't have the same expectations as Texas, only because, look, there's a couple of things. One, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep saying it. Texas high school football recruiting is massively overrated. You can track it, okay? It is really, really, really overrated.
Okay, but really overrated doesn't mean
not great.
Really
it's still
good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if it's 10th instead of 2nd, that's still pretty good.
That's still pretty good, but it's not like Texas
in the union.
It's not like Texas isn't going to compete for that high school football talent, though. Oklahoma's going to come in and take guys. Texas A&M is still going to take guys. I'm going to be honest. Arkansas's got that Jerry Jones money coming in. Dave, don't be surprised if in a few years Arkansas starts going into Texas and plucking out players the way Oklahoma's been doing. They used to do that.
Please don't bring Jerry Jones ever again on the program.
Well, Jerry Jones, unlike the Cowboys, doesn't have to make personnel decisions for Arkansas. He can just write checks. And
he's actually okay.
Although, to be fair, Jerry Jones will try to make personnel decisions, won't he? Knowing him. He'll come in and be like, go recruit that guy.
There's no question. Dak Prescott will be your next head coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks. The year he leaves the NFL, there's no question about that. Well, the difference between that's so interesting to me is Oklahoma and Texas, based off their legacies, their heritage, will be relevant. Arkansas and South Carolina, they were picked up not necessarily because of television ratings. They just thought it made sense to have a 12-team conference. Now, they will tell you, and I saw an interview with Roy Kramer and Jimmy Himes where he said, no, we weren't thinking about an SEC championship game. I'm like, oh, bull. Yes, you are, because they found a little loophole in which they were able to do that. So I think the goal was to get to that and make that much more money.
Shameless plug. I did a whole video on the history of conference championship games and how they came about.
Right.
So
that's what they put that in the message board if you can, because people need to check that out. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button because Caleb's got some long form stuff that you're going to be blown away with. But Arkansas and South Carolina were brought in to be fodder. They were brought in to be tackling dummies. They were brought in to be more sellable as a 12-team league. Oklahoma and Texas, man, they're coming in to compete. I mean, they want it to be like, do you remember, was it the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers that got so many crazy benefits on the front end that they wwere like really good and really relevant in the first year? Do you remember that? They had Tom Coughlin was their head coach, and they gave him like an extra first-round pick and all that sort of thing. That's what the SEC is going to do for Texas and Oklahoma, and maybe, according to Caleb, already has, because they want them to be competitors from the get. This is not just expanding the conference to expand the conference. They want the product to be better, which is why I've long backed the move.
I think they're doing it for Texas. Dave, look at it. It's the opposite for Oklahoma. Look at Oklahoma's schedule. That is a brutal schedule. It's so brutal. It's so brutal. The rig job is in against Oklahoma. I don't know what they have against Oklahoma.
Why would you rig things against Oklahoma? And by the way,
you tell me.
Yes.
Their schedule is so brutal. Now, maybe they think this is the possibility is maybe insiders believe what you and I believe, which is that Brent Venables is not a good coach, and they want to fast track the firing of Brent Venables to force him to make a good hire so they can get good again. So that's why they gave them a tough schedule. Maybe they're thinking that far ahead.
Things like that.
Wait. That is why they get. Do you know who else got the most brutal draw?
Wait on me.
Florida. Florida has the most brutal schedule in the country this year. You don't think they're trying to fast track the Billy Napier firing so they can get somebody in there to make Florida good again?
I don't think the SEC gets involved in the hiring and firing and fast tracking and slow tracking and all that stuff. I can't go with
David. Come on, it's crazy conspiracy Caleb time. Okay, crazy Caleb conspiracy time. Let's do it.
Okay, so you go ahead. Here we go. Crazy Caleb.
That's crazy.
The SEC is setting up the schedules to help prop up teams that will be good, that they want to be good, and fast track the firing of coaches at programs that they want to be good as well. They know Brent Venables can't coach. The world knows that Billy Napier can't coach, but they want Oklahoma and Florida to be good. So they're trying to fast track those firings right now. They use total discretion to set these schedules. Nobody saw it. Alabama got a brutal draw too. That was revenge on Nick Saban for strong-arming the whole league out of doing a 9-game schedule. That's why Alabama did it. But yes, Florida and Oklahoma, there is a rigged job against those two schools because they want those two coaches fired.
Okay, here we go. New poll question up now. Will the SEC be on the lookout for Texas to be great? Yes, they need them to be great. No, every team is treated equally. I think every team's treated equally, but maybe I'm just being.
That is oh my gosh. Wow.
Maybe
Dave
I'm just
believes
being.
in.
Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at Apex Apparel Group Design. Apex Apparel, they do so much more than that. One-stop shop for all your all brand supply products, not just clothes, design, brand, market. Just call Tyler, 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, or it's very easy. You can just type it in. It's apexapparel.com. It is right below, and we would love you to call Tyler because his phone number is right below, and you get a 15% discount on your first purchase. Stay tuned. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
We spoke yesterday about how Danny White received hate mail about firing Kelly Harper, which leads me to this. Tennessee baseball, Tennessee softball. I want to get into that, but first, the hate mail that was expressed was not a great shock because Kelly Harper had the tie to Pat Summitt. But what does it say about a fan base that seems to like to take over, whether it's bring the Lady Vols moniker back, which it never should have been gone in the first place? Is Tennessee's fan base at all a problem when it comes to the Lady Vols? And some Lady Vol only fans that like the Lady Vols don't really care that much about football, don't really care that much about men's basketball. Does that make it harder for Tennessee to hire a basketball coach before we get into tournament time for both teams?
Yes, it absolutely does with women's basketball, which is why Danny White deserves a lot of credit for taking the stance that he did. And that's why I didn't think I understood the talk about the hate mail possibly being a false flag from opposing fan bases. I don't think all of it was. I think there is a Lady Vol contingency that lives in a cult that has a belief that things have to be done a certain way. And it is a superiority complex that has made the program massively inferior as women's basketball is taking off at the same time. And so, yes, they are a huge problem, and they have proven themselves to be very costly to the program for a while now. And this goes back to when Dave Hart made the decision to kind of force Pat Summitt to retire against her will.
It goes way back before then, but give me this stage of it, and I'll give you one that'll show my age.
Okay. Here's why everybody hates. Here's why Dave Hart, for everybody that wants to know, this is why Dave Hart did the Lady Vols merger with the Vols. Okay, this is what people need to understand. Everybody got mad at him for that, for getting rid of the Lady Vols name.
Well, now wait, there's two different things. The merger needed to happen, okay, between the two athletic departments, but you didn't need to get rid of the Lady Vols name. You didn't need to get rid of that. So those are two different things. They had a lot of associate athletic directors that were doing the same thing as the men's side and vice versa.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So the merger was good. The Lady Vol name, taking that away, was stupid.
The reason the backlash to that fell on deaf ears with Dave Hart was because he got the same backlash for pushing out Pat Summitt, which was the right decision, by the way. I'm sorry. I respect everything about Pat Summitt. You can't let a coach with Alzheimer's coach your team, guys. You can't do that any more than I am very sympathetic to someone with muscular dystrophy. You can't let them start on your basketball team.
Well, it was just a tough situation. She thought she could continue to coach, but again, that she wasn't in the mindset to make that decision.
She wasn't coaching well the last 2 years she was there.
Yeah, it was a tough situation, and people told me that covered the Lady Vols during that time frame. Would Lady Vol fans be happier if Tennessee had hired Kara Lawson than Kim Caldwell? Because Kara Lawson has a tie to the Lady Vols?
I think a lot of them would. And I think it would be. I don't think it would be good for Kara Lawson, and I don't think it'd be good for the Lady Vols, because not only would Kara Lawson would then, she would try to win the Lady Vol way at the same time. And what I mean by that is she would get hired, and rather than change with the times of college basketball, because I think she's a good coach, she would fall into the trap of, oh no, we have to solely focus on defensive rebounding in the half-court game, even though you can't recruit to that right now. So, the whole Pat Summitt way, people would say that's working for Dawn Staley. Well, yeah, because Dawn Staley's got a monopoly on recruiting. So, yeah, it's like football, Dave. You can run the simple pro-style offense that Kirby Smart runs when you're getting NFL talent all over the field. When you're not, you got to be a little creative, honestly.
Yeah. And Arthur said, am I on another planet? I don't think that Carol Lawson would have been a good hire. I don't either.
I don't think she's a bad coach. I think she could be a good coach. I just think she would fall. I think it wouldn't have worked because she would have fallen into the Lady Vol trap and the Lady Vol demands. And there needed to be an athletic director who gave the middle finger to the Lady Vol demands and who would hire a coach and back her when she gave the middle finger to the Lady Vol demands. And that's what has been happening.
Would you have, if you're Danny White, and we're going to riff here for a second. If you're Danny White, would you have gone in with one of three mindsets? Doesn't matter. Lady Vol tie, absolutely no Lady Vol tie because you got to break away. Or I should say Pat Summitt tie, excuse me. So your choices are doesn't factor whatsoever. It's a huge factor. I want a Summit gal or guy to be in there. Al Brown was out there. Or I just absolutely do not want to continue with this tradition because, as Elias says, and I think he's got a point, it would have just extended things another 5 years until the inevitable outcome of getting a Caldwell. I tend to agree with that. Do you?
I tend to hate that philosophy because I am of the philosophy that you should just get the best coach and it doesn't matter. But with the Pat Summitt thing, yeah, I would actively choose somebody not tied to Pat Summitt because because here's the thing, even if you are a good coach and you are changing with the times, if you're a Pat Summitt protege, you're coming back to coach for the Lady Vol contingency. You've been around that contingency already. You're kind of enamored with them the way they were enamored with you. Even if you are a good coach who would change things, wouldn't you kind of get sucked in mentally to doing the same things that they had been doing in the past? And I think a very similar situation, by the way, quick history lesson for you guys. In the 1950s, after Robert Nealon stepped down, everybody was moving away from the single wing. Everybody was going to the T formation because they said the single wing is outdated. It's not working anymore. College football is getting too physical and too powerful for it. Nealon insisted it's going to work. He hired Harvey Robinson, fired him after 2 years. Then he hired Bowden Wyatt. Bowden Wyatt did have a 10-1 season with Johnny Majors as his star tailback. Every season after that, he got more and more and more mediocre. And Tennessee would not do anything because they were insistent that we're Tennessee and our tradition is the single wing and that's what we run. And you know what? We don't care if college football changes. This is what we're going to do. And they sunk into irrelevancy until Doug Dickey came in and said, you know what? I have no ties to this university. I don't care. I'm changing everything. And that saved Tennessee's football program. That sparked a renaissance for Tennessee.
Let me tell you where this Tennessee Lady Vol only, called LVOs, for no lack of a better term, that just like the Lady Vols. And there are some people that do that. Some people just like baseball. Some people just like football, probably more than not. And that's fine. But the Lady Vol only fans started back in the 90s, Caleb. You're probably a little too young to realize. I mean, you knew football, but you're probably a little too young to realize all the things that were going on behind the scenes. Well, you had going on behind the scenes two strong-willed people. Doug Dickey was building a men's athletic department. Pat Summitt was building an entire sport. And they both, I think, decided to just let them go about their business, that they're not going to be talked out of what they wanted to do. So I thought that Doug Dickey did that with the Philip Fulmer hire. I think that Pat Summitt did that, obviously, with what she was able to build up. But that's just not going to happen anymore. And you need to realize that Danny White and the men are now on your side. It's not Dave Hart. It's not Doug Dickey, who, I don't know that he said this, but at his age, wouldn't he come across as a guy like, women's sports? You know, I just don't know that he ever really cared. You have a men's program that is on your side now. So if you're going to undermine Tennessee across the board, that doesn't make any sense to me for the Lady Vol only fans.
Let me tell you how ridiculous. And the Lady Vol OnlyFans is not just the Lady Vol community, by the way. Okay. It goes way beyond that. There was a reporter who covers women's basketball on a national scale when Tennessee hired Kim Caldwell. And I'm not going to say it. It's on Twitter. You guys can search it. I'm not going to say the person's name. Who said, and the tweet is still up, she said, would Tennessee ever consider hiring a men's coach with no Power 5 experience the way they did a women's coach with Kim Caldwell? Not realizing, without any research, that almost every Tennessee hire in football and men's basketball had no Power 5 experience. But just threw that out there, okay? And that is what Tennessee is dealing with the Lady Vol contingency. And they tried to say that it was borderline sexist, that they didn't care as much about the qualifications of the women's coach as they did about the football and men's basketball coach, even though Kim Caldwell came as qualified as Josh Heupel came to Tennessee in that moment. And it was a dumb statement. And before Rick Barnes, every Tennessee hire was a group of 5 coach. Let's not get started on how unqualified some of the men's basketball hires were in the past, right? I mean, Buzz Peterson was not qualified for that job at all. And so it was just ridiculous. So that's what you're dealing with that contingency. I'll say this, standing up to it, though. I just thought about this in my head, Dave, as I'm saying it out loud.
Scary.
I compared it to the renaissance of the 60s in football. Not the athletic director. Kim Caldwell is to the Lady Vols what Doug Dickey was to football for Tennessee in the 60s. She is the Doug Dickey of the Lady Vols.
How? Dickey did a lot. Now, hold on.
You ready?
Yes.
In the post-Robert Nealon era, Tennessee sunk into irrelevant. Tennessee moved on from a legendary coach at Robert Nealon, who, by the way, retired early due to an illness. Kind of weird parallels, right? Yeah. Tennessee fell into irrelevancy because they demanded that they still do things the Nealon way. And then they go and hire a young coach with no ties to the program whatsoever in Doug Dickey. And he immediately, overnight, changes the offensive scheme, changes the traditions, and changes everything about the football program and immediately breathes new life into it. What's Tennessee doing now? They sunk into irrelevancy, trying to live by the shadow of their greatest legendary coach who was forced to retire early due to an illness. And now they finally decided we need to inject new life with a young coach who has no ties to the program, who runs a system that is directly contradictory to what we always said we stood for schematically at the Lady Vols. Kim Caldwell is the Doug. Oh my gosh, I'm saying this out loud. I'm going to try to call him on it. Kim Caldwell is the Doug Dickey of the Tennessee Lady Vols. She is to the Lady Vols what Doug Dickey was to Tennessee football in 1964 when he was hired. Dave, you have to go back and read about what it was like when Doug Dickey was hired in 64. The things he did to change Tennessee, do you realize how angry a lot of the contingency was during that time?
No, I do. And for those that don't know, he did the opening of the tee, the Vol Walk. He did a lot of other things.
He integrated. You know how much that angered Tennessee fans?
Travis did say, let's not get ahead of ourselves. She hasn't coached a game. She could be the female Butch. No pun intended.
My God, the female Butch.
Now, Arthur does say, agree with Caleb because times have changed and Tennessee is moving with the current time. The biggest thing that I would say to Tennessee fans, Dickey played at Florida. The biggest thing that I would say, or coached at Florida, I'm not sure where he played. Biggest thing I would say to Lady Ball only fans is the guys are on your side now. You've got it good, but don't think you're going to have it 7 championship good. Those days are gone for all teams, not just yours, but for all teams. Those days are gone. All right, who gets deeper in the postseason? Is it Tennessee's softball program or the Diamond Balls? Been pretty keen to the Diamond Vols. Our own Stacey Oliver has that covered week in and week out. She'll have a preview of the upcoming regular season finale. I really like this team in that I don't want to go so far as to say they're humble. They're still very confident. They've still got, I think, that fur coat. They just don't flaunt it as often outside the dugout. I like this team. I like a lot about this team. I like their approach. I think they're playing without getting overly noticed, and they were 2 years ago. I think they could sneak up on some teams. I like them all around. I think it's a matter of time till Tony Vitello wins a a College World Series if he stays at Tennessee for the next 10 or 15 years. I really do.
I think Tony Vitello will win it too, but I think I'm going to say this. It's the softball team this year. Softball team has the number 3 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And for those that don't know, softball tournament, because pitching has so much more dominance over it, it's less of a coin flip. The NCAA baseball tournament, I don't care who the seeds are and who the teams are. You might as well flip a coin if you win that series, quite honestly. It is a total luck sport. The most luck way of crowning a champion in any sport, that in the NHL playoffs. Because of that, you can never get better than a 30% chance of winning the NCAA tournament, no matter how good you are. If you're a top 3 seed in softball, you can get up to a 40% chance of winning the NCAA softball tournament. The Lady Vols softball team have the 2 best pitchers in the SEC Pitcher of the Year and Carlin Pickens, and they also have Peyton Gottschall, who might have it was between those 2 for SEC Pitcher of the Year. So I think when you look at that, I think that they are low. They don't just have Monica Abbott, who we agree was a legendary pitcher for Tennessee back in 2007 and almost single-handedly won them the College World Series. They have 2 now. They can actually rotate Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling style. On top of that, 6 of their 9 players in their lineup were all SEC this year, including 3 first-teamers. They have a veteran team with Kiki Malloy, Riley West. I think they have a very good chance of winning it all. And I think also just there is kind of a curse. I don't like to make patterns out of things that aren't there. Sometimes it's random, but something does stand out to me about the fact that the number 1 overall seed in baseball hasn't won the NCAA tournament, Dave, since 1999 when they first started doing overall seeds.
So should they throw a game so that they're not the number 1 overall seed?
No, I think it's a total random shot, but I do think there's a lot more pressure on you when you're the number 1 overall seed. And I do think that being the number 1 overall seed puts a lot of extra pressure on you, put it that way. And I think that the one good thing working for Tennessee this year is they probably have less pressure on them than most number 1 overall seeds in history because they seem to be flying a lot more under the radar than they have in the past.
I agree. And they're the favorite, according to DraftKings, to win the College World Series at plus 550. So you bet $100, you get $550 back. Plus 600 Texas A&M, plus 700 is Arkansas. Wake Forest plus 1,000, Oregon State plus 1,100, Kentucky plus 1,200, Clemson plus 1,300, North Carolina plus 1,500. You bring up pitching. As far as the 2 programs right now, who do you favor in their pitching? Is the Lady Vols or the Diamond Vols?
It's the Lady Vols. The Lady Vols may have the 2 best pitchers in the country. I mean, it's like I said, they are where the Diamondbacks were in 2001. Remember when the Diamondbacks just rotated Schilling and Johnson, Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson pitched every other game, the entire World Series? You probably know that because you're a Yankee fan, and that was brutal for you, wasn't it?
Little.
With the way they win. And didn't they bring in Randy Johnson at the end of Game 7 after pitching him in Game 6 to close the deal? I think they did. And so the Lady Vols can do that this year in softball. They're that loaded. They have the 2 best pitchers in the whole sport. So I think that's a big thing. The men's baseball team, by the way, they're loaded too. Don't get me wrong. They are loaded with talent, and they are a home run hitting machine. And I've always said one of the dumbest statements ever said was chicks dig the long ball, because honestly, no, baseball aficionados dig the long ball because the long ball is the most efficient way to score in baseball. Okay, the idea that you shouldn't value the long ball more than any other type of
the long ball too. There's nothing wrong with that saying.
Chicks love Derek Jeter more than anybody else in baseball. He wasn't a long ball guy. As a matter of fact, Derek Jeter is one of the most overrated players in baseball history because he was a dime a dozen.
Surely stupid, but
not a top 5 Yankee of all time.
Friday night pitching. Well, he's not top 5, but he's top 20.
Barely top 10.
Friday. Oh, well, maybe we're on the same page, just in a different way of phrasing it. Because I don't even know these top 10. Friday night pitching duo strikes again, writes Stacey Oliver on our page. Listen, when you have Chris Stamos and reliever AJ Causey, I think you're in pretty good shape to go up 1-0. And I don't think you can overvalue how important it is to win that first game. It seems like Tennessee, and you would have to fact check me on this, but doesn't it seem like Tennessee has an early stumble when it gets to the postseason? That was particularly the case last year against Georgia Tech, and then it leads to their downfall. So the fact that I think that their pitching duo wins almost any matchup on a Friday night with Stamos and Causey, I really like their ability to go deep into the playoffs. But you and I both know the College World Series, if it's not the toughest sport to predict, it's right up there, is it not?
It is the toughest sport to predict. It is the absolute toughest sport to predict because it is literally the biggest crapshoot in all of sports. I mean, the College World Series is an ultimate crapshoot. It is the NCAA tournament is a coin flip, guys. It's a complete coin flip. If you were to do the element of randomness, sport after sport after sport, the baseball NCAA tournament would come in number one, leaps and bounds ahead of every other sport. First of all, baseball is a sport, Dave. Isn't it the one sport where, among any sport, if the best team in the nation plays the worst team in the nation, the worst team in the nation has the best chance to win of any worst team in the nation in any sport?
Until they added the 3-point line in basketball. I still say it's arguable. It's arguable. I think somebody could get hot and hit about 15 threes, and then you're a different basketball team.
Yes, but would you? Okay, a 16 seed will beat a 1 seed in either the baseball tournament or the NCAA tournament next year. You have to bet which one did it happen in. You're taking the baseball tournament every time.
I definitely would. Yes.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at because it's so random. This is just not an effective way of crowning a champion. Baseball is not a sport that should have a lot of tournament teams. It should actually have a few because the regular season is the only way to really separate the talent. So I just think this was that's why I think it's so hard to win. I think if you're one of 64 teams in a tournament in baseball, I don't care how good or bad you are, you have a 1 in 64 chance of winning that tournament because it's a lottery situation.
Derek says, I love the randomness of the College World Series. Now that being said, do you give Tony Vitello any more slack on the leash if he doesn't win a College World Series anytime soon because of the randomness? Does that factor into how you judge his success or lack thereof, Caleb?
This is what I hate about legacies is because championships are so much more of a luck thing than basically keeping a team in the running for a long time. But that is it is kind of the icing on the cake. So it won't have me judge him differently in terms of what he knows, but it will judge his legacy different. This is why, by the way, in college football, I don't necessarily separate coaches by who has more national titles because the coaching job is to get you in position to play for the national title in a consistent basis. Actually winning it, that becomes the luck of the bounce, isn't it? Most of the time.
Yeah, it does. No question about it. I think there's a luck of the draw factor in both sports. It seems more impactful on the men's side.
Yeah, I agree. It's in baseball, you mean? Yes, it's luck of the draw is much more impactful in baseball than anything else. And even in basketball too.
Oh, sorry. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Have a fantastic rest of your day, evening, or morning, everyone.